The glass walls of Sterling Tower glittered like knives against the New York morning. Inside, men in $1,000 suits whispered about numbers large enough to drown a city. The top floor smelled of power, espresso, and fear, the scent of Alexander Roth's empire. Alexander wasn't just rich, he was the kind of rich that made other billionaires check their watches around him. Everything about him was precision, his charcoal suit, his slicked-back hair, even the way he signed contracts. Swift, merciless, final. To his board he was a god, to the world a genius. To anyone beneath him, he was a storm waiting to happen. He hated mistakes, he hated inefficiency, but most of all, he hated being challenged. That morning, his assistant's voice trembled through the intercom. "Sir, the caterers are here, the waitstaff's setting up in the lounge." Alexander didn't look up from his laptop. "Make sure they don't talk. I need silence." Downstairs, in the glittering conference lounge, trays of food gleamed under white lights. Among the waiters, moving in silent choreography, was Amara Daniels, a young black woman in a crisp white shirt and borrowed shoes that pinched her toes. Her smile was gentle, but her eyes, they burned with the kind of intelligence you can't hide even behind exhaustion. Amara balanced a tray of champagne flutes with one hand, her other clutching a small notebook tucked into her apron. Every now and then, she stole glances at the skyscrapers beyond the glass, where clouds drifted like dreams she couldn't afford. She wasn't supposed to be here, not in this building, not in this world. She had a degree in applied mathematics she couldn't use, student loans taller than the tower itself, and a mother at home waiting for medication. So, she waited tables and kept her dreams folded in half like old receipts. Then he walked in. Alexander Roth, tall, cold, magnetic. He didn't walk, he commanded. The air shifted when he entered. Executives straightened their ties. Waiters froze mid-pour. Only Amara didn't look away fast enough. His gaze caught hers, blue steel, assessing, irritated. He hated to be watched. "Eyes down," muttered her supervisor, elbowing her gently. Amara looked away, cheeks burning. But in that fleeting glance, she saw something unexpected in the billionaire's expression. Boredom, the kind that comes from having everything yet feeling nothing. The meeting began. Investors, analysts, a sea of laptops and jargon. Alexander dictated numbers faster than anyone could type. When an executive stammered, he sliced through him with words sharp enough to leave scars. Amara moved silently between tables, pouring coffee, serving croissants. Yet her mind was awake, following the presentation on the screen behind him. Graphs, algorithms, financial models. She recognized them. The formulas weren't just numbers to her, they sang to her, like music only she could hear. But something was off. She frowned. One of the equations in his new AI-driven trading algorithm, the one projected behind him, had an error. Small, invisible, but catastrophic if left unchecked. She whispered to herself. He flipped the coefficient sign, and then froze. Did I just say that out loud? Alexander's head snapped toward her. "Excuse me." His voice was velvet over ice. The room fell silent. Amara's tray trembled. I'm sorry, sir. Nothing." He narrowed his eyes. "You said something about a coefficient." Every executive looked at her like she'd just insulted God. Amara swallowed hard. "It's nothing, sir. He raised a hand. "Finish the sentence." Her heart thundered. "I only meant the coefficient in your predictive model. It's reversed. It should be negative, not positive. Otherwise your error term explodes exponentially." A stunned pause filled the room. Then laughter. One of the executives smirked. "The waitress has opinions on quantitative finance now?" Alexander didn't laugh. He stared at her like a puzzle he didn't ask for. "You understand what that formula represents?" "Yes," she said, quieter now. "It's a recursive regression with feedback adjustment. But if you reverse the sign on the last term, you'll trigger false optimization loops. It'll predict growth where there's decay." Silence. Alexander stepped closer. His presence was overwhelming, the heat of his attention burning through her fear. "What's your name?" "Amara. Amara Daniels." He turned to his board. "Leave us." They hesitated, confused, whispering. But when Alexander repeated himself, they obeyed. The room emptied. Now it was just him and her. He folded his arms. "You seem very sure of yourself, Miss Daniels." "I'm not sure, sir. Just observant." "Observant," he echoed. "You think I, a man who's built a multi-billion-dollar empire, made a math mistake? I think even geniuses can miscalculate," she said softly. That earned her a flicker of surprise. No one spoke to him like that. He smirked. "All right, Miss Daniels, let's test that observation." He picked up a marker and wrote the same equation on the glass wall. Numbers, symbols, impossible complexity. "Solve this. Right now. If you're right, I'll—" He paused, his smile sharpening. "I'll give you everything." Amara blinked. "Everything?" He shrugged. "My company, my car, my penthouse, take your pick, whatever you want." "Because you won't solve it." Her palms sweated. She wasn't supposed to speak to him, let alone solve his math. But something in her, something tired of being invisible, whispered, "Try." She stepped forward. "And if I'm wrong? Then you apologize and leave." Quietly. She nodded. "Okay." Alexander leaned against the table, amused. "Go on then, waitress. Show me your math." Amara stared at the board. The equation was monstrous. Multiple regressions nested inside nonlinear variables, the kind of thing that took teams of PhDs weeks to verify. Her mind raced, reconstructing the logic, chasing patterns. Behind her, Alexander's voice was smooth, mocking. "Do you even know what those symbols mean?" She ignored him. Her lips moved silently, repeating numbers, cancelling terms, searching for symmetry. Minutes passed. Finally, she turned. "You're optimizing the wrong function." He frowned. "Explain." "Your base model assumes market independence, but your adjustment variable, it depends on historical bias, not error. You're chasing noise, not trend." She took the marker and circled a term. "If you correct this, your predictions stop diverging." He stared at the board. For the first time in years, Alexander Roth was speechless. Before he could speak, the door burst open, his head analyst, pale and sweating. "Sir, you need to see this." The beta model crashed again. The predictions went unstable. Alexander didn't move. His eyes stayed locked on Amara. She stepped back, heart pounding. "Looks like your waitress was right." For a long moment, the billionaire said nothing. Then, quietly, "Get her a seat." "Sir?" I said, "Get her a seat." Amara blinked. I should get back to work." "You're not a waitress anymore," he interrupted. "You're coming with me." The analyst stared, confused. "Sir, you can't be serious." Alexander cut him off with a glare. "When was the last time you saw the floor?" The analyst fell silent. Alexander turned back to Amara. "You solved what my entire R&D team missed for months. That deserves a conversation." Her chest rose and fell, disbelief mingling with fear. "What kind of conversation?" He smiled. The kind of smile that built empires and broke hearts. The kind that changes lives. The elevator rose like a sealed capsule through steel and glass. Amara could hear her own heartbeat louder than the hum of machinery. Alexander Roth stood beside her, expression unreadable, hands tucked into his pockets. The glow from the skyline cut sharp lines across his face. Even his silence carried authority. When the doors opened, they stepped into a space so sleek it felt unreal. His private office stretched across half the floor. Marble, chrome, quiet screens showing markets that never slept. The city glittered far below. Alexander gestured toward a chair. "Sit." She obeyed, clutching the edge of her seat. He studied her like a riddle. "You've just humiliated my best analysts," interrupted a billion-dollar meeting, "and somehow you're the only one in that room who saved me from losing everything." She swallowed. "I wasn't trying to humiliate anyone." "Intent doesn't matter," he said. "Results do." He paced toward the window. "You saw something no one else did. I want to know how." Amara met his gaze. "You built an algorithm that assumed human behavior follows logic. It doesn't. You forgot emotion, panic, greed." "I didn't." A small silence, then a faint smile. "So you're saying you understand people better than I do?" I'm saying numbers lie when they're only half true. He turned back to the window, hiding his expression. Interesting. He moved to his desk, scribbled something on a pad, tore off the page, and slid it across to her. That's an NDA. Sign it. If you're staying in this building past the next 10 minutes, you work for me. She blinked. Work for you? I don't give second chances, Miss Daniels. You've already proven you see what others miss. That's what I pay for. I don't even know what position you're offering. He shrugged. Call it consultant, for now. Amara hesitated, staring at the paper. Her hands trembled slightly as she signed her name. The pen felt heavier than it should have. Good, he said. Now let's see if you can do it twice. By the next morning, Amara had a temporary badge, a workstation in a corner that wasn't quite hers, and 50 eyes watching every move she made. Word had spread fast. The billionaire had hired a waitress. When she entered the lab, murmurs followed. Someone muttered, "She's the diversity hire of the week." Another snickered. She kept her head high. Alexander's head analyst, a tall man named Pierce, dropped a folder onto her desk. If you're as smart as he thinks, start with this. It's what broke the model. Amara opened the file. Raw data, noise, broken loops. She frowned, chewing her lip. Hours passed. By lunch she hadn't eaten. She was tracing the logic backward, mapping each decision tree until the patterns began to whisper. There it was. Not one flaw, but a chain reaction triggered by assumptions baked deep inside the code. Pierce came back, smug. You find our missing miracle yet? Maybe, she murmured, but you won't like it. By evening, Alexander called for an update. The room was full of screens and stress. Amara stood near the projection wall, marker in hand. Your algorithm isn't broken, it's scared. A few analysts laughed. Alexander didn't. Explain. It learns too quickly. It assumes the market's first panic is the truth, so it amplifies it. You tried to make it adapt faster, but you taught it fear instead of patience. Pierce scoffed. You're anthropomorphizing code. She drew. On the glass, quick strokes of logic and intuition. No, I'm showing you bias feedback. Your model's punishing itself for being wrong, so it overcorrects. Alexander leaned closer to the board, eyes narrowing. Run it with her correction. They did. Line stabilized. The red slope that had been diving for months leveled, then rose. Gasps around the room. Alexander turned slowly to Amara. You just stopped a financial bleed in 30 seconds. She smiled faintly. Sometimes you just need to teach the system forgiveness. For a moment even he laughed. Quiet, genuine, startled by himself. Over the next weeks, Amara became a permanent part of his inner circle. She worked beside him long hours, numbers and ideas bouncing between them like sparks. She noticed things about him the world didn't see. How he rubbed his wrist when stressed, how he paused before signing any deal, as if asking himself whether victory still meant anything. One night, she found him alone in the lab, staring at data he hadn't touched. Still working? She asked. Thinking, he said, about how easily everything I built almost collapsed because I stopped questioning myself. Even the smartest people need someone to check their math. He looked at her. Something soft in his expression. Is that what you'll keep doing? If you let me. A long silence. You know, when I said I'd give you everything if you solved it. She laughed nervously. I remember. I didn't realize everything might include my respect. Her eyes widened, unsure if it was a compliment or confession. Then his phone buzzed. Crisis again. Always another crisis. He sighed and turned away, mask sliding back into place. Get some rest, Daniels. But she didn't sleep. She kept replaying that moment, his tone, the flicker of vulnerability. A month later came the shareholders' gala. Cameras, champagne, glitter. Alexander stood at the podium, the city glittering behind him. Tonight, he said, Sterling AI reports its strongest quarter in years. And we owe that turnaround to someone you all overlooked. He gestured toward the crowd. Amara Daniels. Applause burst through the room. Amara froze under the lights, feeling the weight of 100 elite stares. Alexander continued. She solved a problem no one else could. Reminded us that brilliance doesn't come with a title. He turned toward her. You solved it, Miss Daniels. I said I'd give you everything, so tell me, what do you want? She smiled. Just the freedom to keep proving people wrong. His jaw actually dropped, a grin chasing the surprise. Then you'll have it. The crowd erupted. Cameras flashed. But for a moment, it felt like only two people existed in that room. The billionaire and the waitress who'd rewritten his world. The applause from the gala faded into memory, replaced by the quiet grind of weeks that followed. Sterling AI was thriving again, and Alexander Roth's name was on every business cover in the world. But when the camera stopped flashing, the corridors of power grew colder. Amara now had an office with her name on the frosted glass. It still surprised her sometimes. The same hands that once balanced coffee trays now typed commands that could sway markets. She'd earned her place, but not everyone wanted her there. Whispers traveled faster than data. The billionaire's charity case, a waitress who got lucky. She's just a headline to make him look humble. Alexander heard the murmurs too. He ignored them, until one morning his board forced a meeting. Pierce, the analyst Amara had embarrassed, spoke first. Sir, with all due respect, Daniels' access privileges are excessive. She's rewriting core protocols without oversight. Alexander folded his hands. She saved those protocols. Pierce didn't flinch, and she could destroy them just as easily. Amara sat quietly at the far end of the table, feeling every stare cut into her. She wanted to speak, but Alexander raised a finger. Gentlemen, he said, if you can find one person in this company who understands those models better than she does, I'll reconsider. Until then, the discussion is over. The room emptied. But something in Alexander's expression had changed. Behind his defense of her was calculation, a question he hadn't asked yet. That night, he called her to his office. The skyline pulsed outside like circuitry. Tell me something, Amara, he said. If you had full control of Sterling's algorithm, could you predict global market crashes before they happen? She frowned. In theory. But predicting isn't preventing, Alexander. It could cause panic. He smiled faintly. Panic can be profitable if you're ahead of it. Her stomach turned. That's not what we built this for. It's business, he said. Information is value. Value is survival. She shook her head. No, information is responsibility. The silence between them was heavy. For the first time, she saw the man behind the empire, the ambition that consumed empathy. Would you really gamble people's lives for another quarter of profit? She asked. His eyes hardened. You think the world cares who gets crushed when markets fall? I just play the game better. She stepped closer, voice steady. Then maybe it's time someone changed the rules. He didn't answer. He just turned away, looking down at the glittering city he owned but didn't understand. 2 days later, Amara discovered something hidden in the system, a shadow protocol, RothNet, a set of automated trades timed to trigger global manipulation. It could make billions or cause collapse, and only 2 people had access, her and Alexander. She confronted him. You built a weapon. It's insurance, he said. If our competitors attack, I pull that trigger first. You'll crash economies. He spread his hands. I'll rebuild them. We always do. Amara realized then that his arrogance wasn't noise. It was armor. He'd been at the top so long he thought he was the system itself. I won't let you use it, she said quietly. He laughed once, cold. You don't have a choice. But she did. That night she stayed in the lab alone, rewriting the code. Her fingers flew over the keyboard, tears she didn't feel sliding down her face. She built a failsafe, one that would lock out RothNet permanently unless both of them authorized it together. When she finished, she left a message on his screen. Some things are worth more than everything. Then she walked out. Morning. Chaos. The system was sealed. Alexander stormed into the lab, security trailing behind. Who authorized this? She did, Pierce said, pointing at the message flashing on every monitor. Rage and disbelief flickered across Alexander's face. Find her. They found her at street level, outside Sterling Tower, watching sunlight break between skyscrapers. He strode toward her, wind tearing through his coat. You locked me out of my own system. You locked yourself out of your own humanity, she said softly. For a long moment neither spoke. The street noises felt far away. Finally he exhaled. You could have ruined me. I could have, she agreed. But I'd rather save what's left of you. Something in him cracked. The arrogance that once armored his voice fell away. I don't know how to be anything else, he admitted. You start by listening, she said. He looked at her, really looked at her, and nodded once. Then teach me. Weeks later, Sterling AI reopened under new protocols, transparent, ethical, rebuilt from the ground up. Amara led the reform. Alexander stepped back, learning what it meant to build without control. The world called it the Roth redemption. He called it Amara's equation, proof that integrity could balance even the heaviest sum. A year passed. The world no longer spoke of Alexander Roth as the arrogant billionaire. Now headlines called him the visionary who humbled power. But in private, he always said one thing: it wasn't me. It was Amara. Sterling AI had transformed. No longer a company that chased dominance, it became a foundation that sought balance, predicting crises not to profit, but to prevent. Amara led the ethics board, mentoring young innovators from backgrounds like hers, dreamers who just needed one person to believe in them. Each morning, she arrived before sunrise, standing by the same window where Alexander once towered above the city. Now, she saw not numbers and markets, but people. The janitor mopping the marble floor, the delivery woman with tired eyes, the interns typing with nervous ambition. She remembered what it felt like to be invisible, and she swore no one under her watch would ever feel that again. Alexander entered quietly most days, no longer in tailored arrogance but quiet discipline, sleeves rolled, phone silent. They worked side by side now, partners in a mission that had grown beyond wealth. One evening, as the city lights shimmered like circuitry below, Alexander placed a file on her desk. It's time, he said. She looked up. For what? He smiled faintly. For you to take it further. Sterling Global, a network of open-source predictive systems, free access for nations that can't afford it. It'll save millions. She blinked, stunned. You're giving it away? He nodded. Everything. Why? Because you taught me what everything's really worth. The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was full of unspoken gratitude, of memories of where they'd started, of the cost of their lessons. Weeks later they stood on a stage together at the World Tech Forum. Behind them, a holographic globe shimmered, lines of data connecting villages, cities, and nations in real time. Alexander stepped up to the microphone, but instead of delivering a speech, he turned to Amara. She's the reason I'm standing here, he said to the crowd. She reminded me that innovation without humanity is just greed disguised as progress. She solved the hardest equation, the one inside me. The audience erupted, cameras flashed. Amara's name trended worldwide, yet all she felt was peace. Not pride, not fame, just peace. After the ceremony, they walked through the night streets, the same way they had once walked through confrontation and doubt. You changed the world, he said quietly. She smiled. No, Alexander, we corrected the equation. Months later, Amara visited a school funded by their foundation in a small, forgotten neighborhood, the kind she once worked in. She knelt beside a young girl tinkering with a second-hand laptop. What are you building? Amara asked. A system that helps farmers predict rain, the girl said shyly. Amara smiled. That's beautiful. Keep building it. The world needs people who care. As she stood to leave, she caught her reflection in the classroom window. The same face, the same eyes, but now, filled with a purpose bigger than herself. That night, back at Sterling Tower, Alexander waited on the rooftop, watching the city breathe. She joined him. two silhouettes against the sky. "Do you ever miss it?" he asked. "Miss what?" "The chase, the power." She thought for a moment. "No, power was never the problem. The problem was forgetting why we wanted it." He nodded slowly. "And now?" "Now we use it to lift others." A long silence. Then he said softly, "Amara, you once told me some things are worth more than everything. I think I finally understand." She looked at him, eyes reflecting the stars. "Good," she whispered, "because the world just got its second chance." They stood together in quiet triumph. No contracts, no cameras, no equations, just two souls who had rewritten what success meant. A year after the launch of Sterling Global, the network connected half the planet. Farmers in remote deserts could now forecast drought. Children learned from AI tutors that spoke their language. The system worked too well, so well that governments began to take notice. At first, it was invitations, leaders requesting demonstrations, partnerships, photos with Alexander Roth and Amara Daniels. Then came the contracts. Pages of clauses and sub-clauses that promised collaboration but hinted at control. One afternoon, a diplomatic convoy arrived at Sterling Tower. The visitors wanted exclusive access to RothNet 2, the predictive branch that could model civil unrest. With this, their spokesperson said smoothly, "We could prevent riots before they start." Amara heard what he didn't say, or silence people before they speak. Alexander listened in silence, fingers steepled, the weight of old temptations pressing on him. After they left, he found Amara on the rooftop. "If we say no," he said, "they'll build their own version, without ethics." She turned toward the skyline, the city glowing like circuitry beneath them. "Then we teach faster than they can copy. We make transparency the weapon." He studied her face, the same fire that had first defied him years ago. "You always choose the hard way." "It's the only way that lasts," she replied. Family, they launched an open education campaign. Thousands of local engineers trained to maintain their own AI systems, independent of any corporation or state. It was messy, chaotic, full of mistakes, but it worked. For the first time, knowledge spread faster than greed. Still, pressure mounted. Anonymous messages threatened their servers. Stockholders demanded profits. Some board members resigned, calling them idealists running a charity. One night, Sterling's headquarters went dark, servers overloaded, data bleeding away. Hackers. Within minutes, years of work teetered on collapse. Alexander burst into the control room, his voice sharp but steady. "Lock down Sector 3! Amara! Reroute the core!" She was already at the console, eyes reflecting code and fire. "It's not an attack. It's a takeover. Someone's rerouting our data to a private network." "From where?" She hesitated. "Inside." They traced the signal to a hidden account, Pierce. The same man who had once tried to discredit her. He'd been quietly building his own empire within theirs, feeding Sterling's code to the highest bidder. When they confronted him, he didn't deny it. "You built a system too pure for this world," he sneered. "So I gave it teeth." Security dragged him out, but the damage was done. The system was fractured. The world watched to see if Sterling Global would fall. For 3 days and nights, Amara worked without sleep, rebuilding the network line by line. Alexander stayed beside her, bringing food, silence, and faith. On the 4th dawn, she looked up from the screen. "It's done, but I've added something new." He raised an eyebrow. "What?" "A self-healing protocol. It learns from every breach, every failure, like people do." He smiled faintly. "You gave the world resilience." "No," she said softly. "We reminded it how to start again." Months later, Sterling Global was stronger than ever. No longer a company, but a movement. Communities owned their data. Children coded in classrooms named after Amara Daniels. At a small ceremony, Alexander spoke to a group of students. "Once, I thought power was about owning everything," he said. "Then someone showed me that real power is giving it away." When he stepped off the stage, Amara met him with a quiet grin. Careful, Roth, you're starting to sound like me. He laughed. That's the smartest thing I've ever done. They stood together as drones lit the night sky with a single phrase, "The future belongs to everyone."